The city buzzed with life beneath the towering glass walls of Cross Enterprises, but Ethan Cross barely noticed. Inside his corner office, surrounded by success, he felt only silence. His empire was flawless, yet something inside him had been empty for years, a hollow that wealth couldn't fill. That morning, rain tapped softly on the window when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "A woman named Lena Hart," she said. His heart skipped a beat. That name, one he had buried beneath ambition and pride, returned like a ghost. He hadn't seen her in almost 5 years, not since the night their world shattered. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Send her in," he said, though every instinct screamed to run. When the door opened, time seemed to freeze. Lena stepped in, looking both familiar and distant, calm, but with eyes that carried storms. Yet it wasn't her presence alone that stole his breath. 2 small children stood beside her, one clutching a tiny stuffed bear, the other peeking curiously from behind her coat. Their faces were hauntingly familiar. The same hazel eyes, the same quiet intensity he saw in his own reflection. "Hello, Ethan," Lena whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk." He rose slowly, every memory rushing back. The love, the betrayal, the argument that ended everything. The room seemed to shrink around him as realization dawned like a thunderclap. He didn't know why, but deep down he already sensed the truth waiting to be spoken. A truth that would change his life forever. Ethan couldn't shake the image of the twins from his mind. As Lena stood before him, he felt as though time had folded in on itself. Their faces, those curious eyes, that same tilt of the chin, were reflections of his own childhood photos. He wanted to speak, to ask the questions flooding his mind. But his throat tightened with something he hadn't felt in years, fear. "Why now?" he finally asked, his voice low. Lena's gaze didn't waver. "Because they deserve to know the truth," she said softly. "They've started asking about their father." Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered that night years ago, how he'd accused her of lying, too consumed by pride to see her tears. Back then, money and control were all he cared about. Love was a distraction, family a weakness. But now, standing before the 2 little lives he never knew existed, all those beliefs seemed hollow. The twins shifted nervously, whispering to each other, unaware that they were the center of a storm. "Are you sure?" he murmured, the words trembling out. Lena smiled faintly, but her eyes shimmered. "Look at them, Ethan. Do you really need proof?" He didn't. Every heartbeat told him what his mind refused to accept. For the first time in years, Ethan Cross felt powerless, not because of loss, but because he was face to face with something far greater than success. Love he never knew he had. That night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights painting reflections across the glass walls. Normally, he found comfort in the quiet hum of success, but now every tick of the clock felt heavier. He couldn't focus on the files spread before him. All he could see were 2 little faces, curious, innocent, and unknowingly his. When he closed his eyes, he could still hear Daisy's soft laugh and the way Willow had shyly hidden behind Lena's coat. The memory felt too real to be a dream. For the first time in years, guilt settled into the space where pride used to live. He picked up his phone a dozen times that night, each time stopping short of calling her. What could he even say? "I'm sorry" felt too small for what he'd done. He had walked away from a woman who loved him and unknowingly left behind the best part of himself. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping against the glass like an echo of the past. He thought about Lena, how she must have struggled alone, how she'd raised their daughters without ever asking for help. That strength both humbled and broke him. By morning, Ethan made a decision. For years, he had run his company with confidence and control, but now, for the first time, he was terrified of one meeting, the one that could change everything. He sent a message to Lena, asking if he could see the girls again. The reply came hours later. "If you mean it, come tomorrow." Not as a CEO, as their father. The next afternoon, Ethan drove toward the small coastal town where Lena now lived. The city skyline faded behind him, replaced by quiet roads and sea winds that carried a calm he hadn't felt in years. His hands gripped the steering wheel, but his heart raced like he was heading into a boardroom filled with judgment. Except this time, it wasn't shareholders he was facing. It was his past, his truth, and two little souls waiting for answers. When he pulled up to a cozy white house with flowers by the porch, he paused, staring through the windshield. He could see them, Lena kneeling beside the girls as they played in the yard. Laughter filling the air like a melody he didn't know he'd missed. He stepped out slowly, his throat tightening as Daisy noticed him first. "Mommy, that man's here again," she said with wide eyes. Lena turned, her expression unreadable, a mixture of surprise and quiet strength. Ethan walked closer, his usually confident stride replaced by hesitation. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said softly. "I almost didn't," he admitted, voice low, "but I couldn't stay away." The girls stood close, studying him curiously. "Are you really our daddy?" Willow asked, her small voice piercing the silence. Ethan knelt down, his eyes glistening. "Yes," he whispered, "I am. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to find you." Lena's eyes softened slightly, but her guard remained. "Words are easy, Ethan," she said. "They'll believe what they see." He nodded, realizing this wasn't about proving anything. It was about becoming someone worth their trust. Ethan spent the next few weeks driving back to that little town, each visit peeling away a layer of the man he used to be. The first time the twins were shy, hiding behind Lena's legs. The second time they smiled. By the third, Daisy ran to show him her drawing, 4 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. He couldn't stop staring at it. "That's us," she said proudly. "Mommy, me, Willow, and Daddy." The word Daddy hit him like a wave. For years he'd been called Sir, Boss, Mr. Cross. But this small, innocent voice calling him Daddy, that was something else entirely. It filled every empty space in his chest that money never could. He started showing up early, helping Lena fix the fence, carrying groceries, reading bedtime stories until the girls fell asleep. Each moment felt fragile, like a miracle he didn't deserve but couldn't let slip away again. Lena watched quietly, testing him in silence. She wanted to believe he had changed, but part of her still carried the echo of the night he'd turned away. One evening, as the sunset poured gold through the windows, Ethan finally spoke what had haunted him for years. "I thought success meant never being weak," he said softly, "but I was wrong. The real strength was here with you, with them." Lena's eyes filled, her walls breaking just a little. For the first time she smiled, not out of habit, but from hope. A year later, Ethan's life looked nothing like the one he once guarded behind glass walls and luxury. The man who once measured his worth in profits and power now woke up to giggles in a small seaside home, pancakes burning slightly on the stove, and two little girls arguing over who got to sit on his lap first. The sound of laughter filled the place that had once echoed only with silence. It was messy, loud, and imperfect, but it was real. His company still ran smoothly, but he no longer lived in his office. Every weekend, he was back in that coastal town where he wasn't the CEO of Cross Enterprises. He was simply Dad. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena joined him on the porch. The air smelled like salt and new beginnings. "I never thought we'd end up here again," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. The woman who had once been his greatest regret and was now his greatest redemption. "Neither did I," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "But maybe we were never meant to end, just to start again. Better this time." The twins ran across the yard chasing fireflies, their laughter echoing into the twilight. Lena reached for his hand, and for the first time in years, peace settled in his heart. He had spent half his life building an empire, but it took losing everything to learn what truly mattered. Sometimes second chances don't just change your story, they rewrite your soul.